So I'm Michael. I'm the CEO of Synaptec Health. I'm also a board-certified emergency medicine physician, and got into this space when I was in clinical practice and even out through residency, when I started to realize that the clinical side of medicine was making a lot of progress, but the administrative back end of medicine was just significantly lagging behind other areas of tech. And that if we did not start to make some pretty significant improvements in terms of the technology and the administrative side of medicine, that the clinical side of medicine was going to dramatically get held back and not be able to advance forward, similar to other industries. And that was something I did not want to have happen. And so I saw that starting with medical coding was an excellent entry point into starting to make that change. It's been an interesting journey for definitely. The major thing is that healthcare is not like other industries, and if you are outside of healthcare trying to get into it and figure out the complexities of how it works, it's going to be extraordinarily difficult for you to do that. And so one of the benefits, working clinically, is that you understand some of the nuances in terms of how workflows work, how physicians can be very resistant to change, resistant to technology, and for good reason. There's a lot of technologies that enter the scene and they're not worth the time of day. And then also when you have patients at risk and there's privacy, you have to be pretty concerned about what you actually start engaging with. So there can be quite a bit of resistance. So understanding what is important to physicians, what's not, is it actually going to make their days more complex? Is it actually going to make it easier? Those are all factors that need to be taken into consideration. Unless you've been working in it, it's difficult to make that call. So the interesting thing about the space that we're in right now is that going back to starting during COVID, getting really started in 2020, 2021. A lot of emergency departments, this is where we started, we're having some pretty significant financial problems. And if you have a decrease in terms of your patient population that's coming in, with many departments being cut 50% in terms of the patients that are coming in, that's a huge hit on your revenue stream. And it really started to get companies to realize that, okay, well, if we're not having patients, we can't just increase the amount of services we're doing for them arbitrarily. And so that leaves that you need to be more efficient in terms of the cost that it takes to generate that revenue, or to find the revenue within your records, and then also to improve the documentation as well, to make sure that if you actually did one of those services, that you're able to extract and actually bill for it. And it was a good opportunity. It was a time where companies really could start reaching out, looking to bring on a technology, because they were kind of forced to do it. And now with COVID being over, companies, some of the money that they got through COVID relief packages is starting to dry up, and so again, it's putting more pressure on that. So they may have some improvement in terms of the patients that are coming back, which has happened, but it's not to where it was to pre-pandemic levels. So they're starting to really look into ways that they can improve the overall revenue, since they can't necessarily just see more patients.
Right.
The biggest thing is just to make sure that you get in front of customers early enough. You can sit at home all day long and try and perfect your product, but until you actually get it out there and have people start using it, you're not going to know what is working and what's not. Because you may think something is the thing that somebody needs, and it can be completely different. So we were able to take a bit more time because of COVID to improve our product, and that definitely was worth its time. That allowed us to go out to market and be able to code 100% of the charts for our customers, that was a big deal. It's a big difference between doing obviously 50, but even 90%, and that difference between doing 90%, 95%, and 100% of the charts is a big difference. But to be able to get your product out in front of customers early enough to start getting that feedback from them is the most important thing that you really can do as a startup. I would say that, to be honest, it actually is that, in terms of making sure that you get out in front of your customers early enough, rather than you actually sitting at home trying to perfect it on your own. That was one of the biggest things, I think, that made the biggest change with us, in terms of us improving the product quicker and also just getting out to more customers faster and having the product expand. I would say again that really was the advice that we had gotten along the road from VCs and other founders, is to just get out there and go do it.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, so the technology is definitely where it may have taken 5-10 years for the healthcare industry to get on board with the new technology. The pandemic, like a lot of industries, it kind of fast-tracked that in terms of people getting more comfortable with it, partly because they may quote unquote not have had a choice. If you have teams of your coders who can't go to the office or they're sick or whatever, the restrictions just in general, society was not functioning as it was. You still have those patient charts that need to be coded, and they just start piling up. So it really forced them to look at technologies and just become a little bit more comfortable with that sooner rather than they would have otherwise. So that was really one of the things out of the pandemic, I would say, that made the biggest change for us. I mean, anytime that you have a new technology, the onus is always on you to prove that this is legitimate, this is something that works.
Yep.
I think anybody looking at this technology, when you sit down and say, we can take your encounter at the time the physician signs the note, and then we will give you the codes back. And you don't have to deal with the volume fluctuations. The cost is significantly cheaper than human teams, and then you don't have to go through the hiring and training cost all the time of anytime there's rule changes and whatnot. So it can be a fairly obvious technology, but you still have to prove that this is going to be the reliable solution. And that gave us basically the benefit of the doubt throughout COVID to be like, okay, great, here's your opportunity and chance. And so it really helped us get started a lot quicker than maybe we otherwise would have been able to. When we first started out, we thought the pandemic might be like a real problem, but it actually ended up being kind of a good thing. Quality and consistency is a real issue. With there being a lot of turnover, with there being a lot of variability, if you have teams of hundreds of thousands of people, how do you know that they are actually consistently coding? And then as a company who is submitting codes, you don't know what the individual coder is actually submitting. You do your audits and you can look, but you don't at the end of the day know each individual chart, and that puts you at risk. And that also leads to denials. You don't have that nuance of control over what's being submitted and potentially what the denials are. And then as the coder on that side of it too, you aren't able to see globally the high risk that you are faced with when you're looking at that particular chart. So if you are able to have a technology that is able to look at all of the encounters that are for a particular customer and see who the payer is for that, you can start to build models around detecting this chart is high risk for being denied, and therefore you can prevent that from ever even being denied in the first place. And that's just not a perspective that you're really able to accomplish when you're at the level of a human coder looking at one individual particular chart. Yeah, so the way that we went about it is we started with just coding 100% of the charts. And yes, it took maybe a bit more time. This gets back to the just getting going quicker.
Yep.
And maybe there's a case to be made of not doing it that way, but I think that really paid off in the long run because we built the technology around that perspective rather than it having been a continual narrowing gap of percentages that we're able to do. And so when we go and have a conversation with a customer, to be able to tell them we will, this is 100% of the charts that you need coded, that's a big relief. Now there is a component to that where it can take them a minute to understand exactly what you're talking about because they're not used to a system that is taking the physician note and you get the codes. They're very much used to it working in with their current workflow or something that you might be able to come to them with in terms of combining it with humans to be able to solve their problem with the medical coding. So yeah, by us going out and starting with coding 100% of the charts, that's dramatically improved their overall workload, which is, as you can imagine, been a pretty big change on their bottom line. So the two biggest things. Well, I mean, first of all, you can talk about the technology. You can have lofty goals and all these customers, but if you don't have the right team, forget it. You're never going to be able. This is a hard problem. Dealing with language, dealing with healthcare, it's a very difficult problem. If you don't have the right team, you're never going to be able to solve it. And people say like, one great engineer is worth 1,000 or 100, okay engineers, and it's not. I mean, it's worth an infinite number because you can have 100 great engineers, and they're just never going to solve the same problem that you could potentially have with excellent engineers. So I've spent a very I've spent a lot of time in terms of making sure that we have the right team to do it, and so is my co-founder as well. That's been something that we put a lot of time into. So yes, there's things on the technology side, I would say, but the team is, that's been the most significant thing. In terms of the technology itself, again, being able to go out and do 100% of the charts has been, that's been a real game changer for us in terms of opening the doors and having different conversations with customers because they're able to more dramatically rethink their workflows when looking at the revenue cycle.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the interesting things that we've seen from our customers is when we first start, oftentimes what you'll see is they want to do an audit. And so if they have their own teams or their current company, whoever they're using it, they will have us code charts alongside their coders, which totally understandable. If I was them, I would probably do the same thing as well. But shortly thereafter, we have actually had it turn around where their coders were auditing us and it ended up turning around to the technology was actually auditing their teams. And some of their coding managers started to realize that there were some pretty significant discrepancies in the overall quality of the codes that were getting assigned by their teams. And we've actually had customers turn around and start setting up education for their own coding teams to train them on where areas that they can improve. And that's one of the best compliments you can actually probably get from a customer is to have that type of feedback. So that's been a great thing for us to see from them. So one of the decisions we made very early on was how we wanted to go about solving medical coding, and we picked emergency medicine as the place to start. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One is it's my specialty and my background, but also if you can solve emergency medicine, then you can solve just about any specialty because of the complexity and the breadth of pathology that comes to the door. There's a wide variety of ICD-10 codes. There's a lot of procedures that have to be coded, so there's pretty significant complexity. However, at the same time, it's still narrow enough to where you're solving one particular problem just to get solved and get that started and get that going very well, rather than trying to solve all of coding at once. And there have been some approaches by companies that I think have tried to take too broad of a view, look at coding all as one, just coding in general, and I think that is a mistake. And so we picked one particular area to get started with. So we picked emergency, and then we are bringing on additional specialties as our customers have them as needs, and then we just tailor our models for that particular specialty. And even off of that, we'll tailor them even farther for community hospitals, outpatient settings, rural residency programs, major university hospitals, and build individual models that are tailored for that specific patient population and that style of note writing and composition of the staff there. At this point, it's just continuing to get out there and expand as rapidly as possible into the market. There is a lot of competition that's heating up, in terms of the space, and you just want to make sure that you are getting to as many customers as possible, show them that you have the technology that can actually solve their problem first before somebody else gets in there. I feel quite confident about our product and happy to put it in front of anybody, but if you've taken on some other technology, regardless, even if it's maybe not quite as superior, there is a bit, it takes a bit in terms of people to make the decision to make a transition. And so we want to make sure that we are able to get our product in front of customers, see that this really is something that's going to solve their problem, before potentially there could be the door open for somebody else or to move in on that. So we've been putting a lot of time into customer outreach and getting them a trial, getting them on board with starting the product.